Oh, wait, before you start, I've just realised I forgot my essential prop.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Got myself a new fan.
Oh, I like that fan as well.
The stark contrast between the kind of fans we have up here in the north and ones in Bristol that just read the word cunt.
Am I good to go again now, Alaska?
You have my permission.
Well, thank you, Your Grace. Thank you. Hello! I'm Sister Babeushka.
And I'm Sister Alaska Lott.
And this is Utter Nunsense.
This is the show where we pour a cup of tea
and utter whatever nonsense pops into our heads.
This is basically a laid-back chat between some very good friends.
Yeah, so. And a new episode is uploaded once a month, every month, on, surprisingly, the first of the month.
So make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're notified of new episodes when they're released.
And it's a podcast. And we have a couple of very special guests all the way from the fabulous Glasgow Mission.
Oh, we definitely need to find out who these fabulous sisters are.
I'm Novice Sucky Ballstreet of the Sacred King Jaw. I'm from the Glasgow Mission of Perpetual Indulgence. I'm a she, her, them, and I'm very happy to be on the show today.
Hello, my name is Novice Anamana. Do 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 do. Anamana do 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 do. Anamana do 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 do. So, yes, I'm also a novice in our wonderful mission in Glasgow. And I'm tickled pink and wet in all the right places to be here. And also invisible. There we go. I'm phasing in and out of reality. It's been one of those days.
What an entrance, Babeushka.
Buggered my knees and everything for it.
Serving that community on your hands and knees.
Well, it is hard work on that beat farm, I will tell you that. Yes, always on the hands and knees.
They won't pull themselves.
November is when this episode is coming out. And there's a particularly important day in November that we tend to mark as sisters, which is Trans Day of Remembrance on the 20th of November.
Trans Day of Remembrance is when the community remembers those we have lost tragically over the last year across the globe to acts of violence and transphobia.
It's also a day to celebrate their lives.
We also have Transgender Awareness Week, which happens the week before that date, which is also a time to help raise visibility for transgender people and help shining a light on the issues that they're still facing within the community and ways that we can move forward.
It does mean that November can feel like a really heavy time for the LGBTQIA plus community. So we are here today to try and bring some balance by sharing a selection of more fun and uplifting stories on the trans experience so that we can focus on the positives as well.
Darn tootin'.
I think it's safe to say that there are a number of us who also fall out with the gender binary on this call.
I'll never tell, apart from I'll tell right now. So, in my secular self, I am non-binary. So I do not define as either male or female. I am something that is an experience, an amalgamation of different truths from both to make something which is neither, which is nice and complex. And how I express this can be very different depending on my mood or the temperature outside. Because I find that, something like a nice silk scarf might really accentuate how I'm feeling that day. But a nice silk scarf on a cold Glasgow December is begging for death by freezing. What I understand as my gender expression, and my expression in general, and my identity are just faces of a diamond. Each face of a diamond is part of a singular truth. Each of them is valid, but they add to a universal understanding of what that concept is. And my pronouns, of course, are they, them, in my secular self. As a sister, I go by any pronoun.
I feel a lot of that really resonates with me, particularly your analogy to the multiple faces of a diamond and how there's so many different aspects to people. Like you, I also identify as non-binary, and I identify very strongly with this being part of the trans umbrella. I know not everyone connects those terms, but for me it was a real revelation when I finally realized that non-binary was also included under trans. I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. I'm still on a journey of discovering what it really means for me, and I'm continually learning more about myself as I'm able to let go of societal expectations. So for me, part of that has been about gender presentation and understanding that I don't have to present in any particular way, and that doesn't make me any less valid. I am simply human, and as a result, my pronouns are all pronouns. And I say all very specifically rather than any. So it's not that you can pick one set and stick with them. I would actually like people to use all of them interchangeably. It makes life far much more fun, and I think accurately captures who I am as a person. You get bonus points if you avoid the obvious pronouns.
From my gender expression, I am a cis woman. I went to Pride or things like that because of my sexuality, and that was never about my gender until I ended up having a lot of trans friends and then realised what they went through on a daily basis. It has given me a bigger insight, and it really opened my eyes and made me want to stand up more for them. I wanted to be there to give a voice to people when they didn't have one. My pronouns are she, her or them. I'll go by Hall, which is obviously a proper Glasgow pronoun. Hall, you, it, her, she, hingy, all of the above.
Use.
The best Scottish pronoun. Babeushka, I mean, you are a complete mystery. We've never heard about your experience before. Tell us more.
Never talked about it before. Non-binary. Yay. But nobody believes me because my tits are huge. I'm non-binary, but nobody believes me because my tits are huge. Yeah. Yeah, non-binary in secular life. And I know it sits under the trans umbrella, but for me, I don't necessarily link the two up. So I sort of, just like I don't go, oh, I'm Scottish, I'm British, European, I sort of skip out British because that's shit. So I skip out trans just because it doesn't fit with my perception of myself. But again, multifaceted diamond. And really, if you dissect me when I die, you will probably find deep down inside I was actually a little old Ukrainian lady listening to a Walkman of nothing but Kate Bush all her life.
I respect your truth.
And your pronouns would be
they, them, or you, cunt face.
fabulous. I may have to bleep that in the episode.
Well, cunt. Right, kids, it's fucking story time. We're going to tell you some great trans stories. It's going to bring you joy.
So, to start us out with a nice lump of joy, I'd like to recount a tale that was created this year at Cardiff Pride. So we went down to Cardiff in the bowels of Wales, and we went through the parade and such, all of our splendour and glory with sisters from across the UK. And I came across this person who was in the middle of the fray, and they went to me and went, "Are you Sister Anne?" I was like, "Oh, you're a very young person." And I was trying to figure out, how the hell do you know I'm Sister Anne? Because I'm Novice Anne right now. And it turned out I had done in 2014 a human library project, which took me to Roslyn Primary School, where I got to teach people about the sisters as a way of having a bit of diversity. So there's a lot of different people. There was somebody who was trans. There was somebody who was Muslim there. You had people who were teachers. You had people of different ages, different persuasions. You had a gay person there. And we were going around different tables explaining what we do and why we do it. And they did a homework, which is where they drew, because I talked about how we feel inside being on our faces. And we project what's inside of us on our face. And some of those faces that were drawn, they had lots of different, like, rainbows and sparkles. Some of them had deeper meaning to some of their pictures. Needless to say, one of the little people who were there came up to me and said, "You're Sister Anne. You helped me decide who I am. You were the voice I needed when I was young." And I'm a trans man now. I gave them the biggest hug. Their friend took pictures of this encounter because we were both crying. It was their first Pride, and they'd come down to see a friend. It was Cardiff Pride, and it was just that this is a person who lives in Edinburgh. And just all the stars aligned for us to meet and me to like just see this person and just go, God damn, that thing that we're constantly telling people, don't feel guilt, don't feel shame, be yourself. If there's room for me like this, there's room for you to be anything you want. This person bloody listened, took the message and transformed and became themselves through it.
It's like, yeah, this everything I've done's made sense.
What an absolutely beautiful, beautiful moment. And as you say, really gets down to the heart of what it is we as sisters are trying to do in the world, what we're trying to put out in the world, is allow people to find themselves and be their true, authentic, genuine selves.
The fact 10 years down the line that's come back and they've flourished as their true self, that's beautiful.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't know if you've ever come across this concept of referring to people as eggs before they realise that they're trans. And they have that moment, that egg cracking moment when they first realise. And it sounds like your first interaction was that egg cracking moment that initially sparked that change for them to actually discover who they really were and become themselves.
New nickname, and the spoon she cracked.
I very much understand where I am in my gender as a state of egg. It's just that I know that if I am egging, I do not know what I will hatch to, because if woman cannot be considered as to what I am now, then I do not want to be part of it. Because I have defended the rights of lots of different people who look very far from what traditionally a person of that gender expression is, and also with the amount of different people gatekeeping, which is one of the biggest sins that I can think of. When we're all trying to destroy patriarchy, one does not need to start saying, well, you can't destroy patriarchy dressed like that, or calling yourself that, or peeing in this place.
In Glasgow, there has been a really big rise in transphobic crime and things like that. So I think that's why it is more important that we do talk about the joy as well as the negativity.
Sick of it, the division and the nonsense, when we can actually be reaching for the stars, self-actualizing, just making the world a better place. And that's my breakdown.
We got it all on camera.
When you find your place and you have that eureka moment, these are the moments that we need to spread to other people so that they think, right, well, they did it. Actually, I can do it. And it's contagious. It spreads. You're spreading your love and acceptance.
That moment when you realise that you don't have to do what's expected and you can be anything you want and present anything you want is a truly freeing moment, I think, and is a beautiful thing about not conforming to the gender binary.
I believe that you have a few stories from the internet.
From the internets.
If you want to know where any of these stories came from, come and contact us. I love that you can see what I'm doing in the eye of in the middle of my head. Oh, look, there's a window. There it goes. Yay.
So our first tale from the tinterwebs, from the great site of Reddit, because nothing ever terrible comes out of Reddit. But we got some good stories from Reddit for a change. A nice happy story from one anonymous user. I moved to a new city while still in very early transition, not out to anyone yet, and started my first semester of teaching in boy mode. Admittedly, a very feminine boy mode, but still under my dead name. Anyway, it's the first day of class, and I'm talking to the inevitable line of students with questions after the lecture, and there's this one girl who is deliberately hanging back until everyone else leaves. She gets up to me and she says, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm transgender, male to female. My name is dead name on the roster, but I want to go by their chosen name. Just wanted to drop that bomb on you now so we can deal with that." And yo, you should have seen the look on her face when I just leaned in a little closer and said, "Me too."
I love this so much.
This one made me tear up for some reason, and I think it's just because of The recent amount of vitriol going towards, education institutions and teachers not being allowed to talk about anything queer, and the fact that it's happened in the UK before with Section 28, and it was just all the feels with this one.
Instant favourite teacher.
Being a teacher or something like that, or if you're someone who is like obviously a responsible adult, the position of power, then you then become that little bit more accessible and someone that you can be safe to. The fact that they were brave enough to say, yeah, me too, and give that person a connection, I think is just so brave.
I think actually for teachers coming out, it's just difficult in general because of the position they hold. They're so visible to everyone in the entire school and all the parents. And I saw on social media recently, there was a bit of a fuss about a teacher who was trans somewhere in America. And there was protests happening because she had started wearing prosthetic breasts and people objected to them. And it just sounds like such a difficult situation for her to be in. And to have such backlash is really sad, actually.
Them coming out as a teacher, I think, is such a brave thing to do. I think that kind of segments into just a little thing I seen on the internet that shows the opposite side of that. And it was another story someone had, and it was setting up a Roku for playing Netflix on the TV with my dad. It wasn't working. And the person said, oh, I'll check the instructions. And their dad turned to them and said very seriously, we're men, we don't read instructions.
I do like that is a nice play on stereotypes being used in such a positive and affirming way.
It is like a dad joke almost, for a dad thing to say.
Next on the list, never ask for directions, son.
They said, oh, it was an incredibly stupid thing to say, but it made them smile because it meant that he saw him as a man.
It's amazing how the smallest things can be so validating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The next one that I've come across, I think may have actually come from the same person that Socky Ball's story came from. But this time it was about coming out to their brother as a trans guy. And apparently at the time they were both sitting at the dinner table. Their parents already knew at this point, so they were pretty sure their brother was going to be okay with it, but they were still, understandably a bit nervous. And they just said to him straight out, I'm a boy and my name is new name. And he jumped up from the table and said, I have a brother. And then he ran to the bathroom and came back with his razor and started explaining in detail how to shave their face. And he felt it was like the best reaction that he'd ever had from anyone. I think they just sound like an awesome family, I'm not going to lie.
That's a place where people can grow.
Absolutely.
You're doing it right.
There is many Glasgow women who need to learn how to shave their faces.
People of all genders and sexes, they can choose to, or not, as the case may be.
Winter's coming. This is for insulation on my face, and also it saves a fortune on paint. Look at you with all your painted chins. Me, it stops. It stops right there. Some people get like 100 faces out of a tub. I get about 250. For another delightful story. So it goes as follows. So at some point early in my transition, my mother said to me, you better not get bigger boobs than me, as a mother would say. I replied, they grow how they grow, as same as yours. Well, a few years later, we were talking about finding clothing to fit our similar body type. And she said, do you know how hard it is to find a 30A bra? And I replied, actually, I really do. Thankfully, I'm a 38C now. Smiley face. And she just called me a bitch. And it was great.
Both validating and hilarious.
I think definitely chimes in with the Scottish humour because we are quite self-deprecating. Going to have a joke and probably call them something like a bitch, then you are loved. Because we're like, oh, I love that bitch.
Whereas I refer to everyone, oh, I love that cunt. Oh, that cunt Alaska.
It's a word for all occasions.
Sadly, YouTube is an American company and therefore they do not ascribe to Scottish uses of the word cunt. That every single time we say it, I have to bleep it with a noise. I choose to use the sound of a rat squeaking because it amuses me.
Ah! They'll never know the warmth of a cunt as we do.
Bleep that, Alaska.
So are you cunts all ready to move on to the next story?
Spread some more trans joy. Another Tinternet user has submitted a story. My mom and I were at the store. I was running after her for some reason, and I felt my boobs bounce while I was running for the first time. I felt so fucking euphoric and shared this with her, and she was like, nice.
Lovely jubblies.
I feel like it's only nice up to a certain point, then it starts to become unnice again because you have to start holding them as you run.
Sports bras.
Multiple.
One is never enough.
Real
That was clearly going to be the next stop in the store after that running experience, was right to the sports bras.
So emotionally moved.
Talking of bras, one of the stories I found was early on in my transition, I complained to my mum about how a bra I bought fit weirdly and it didn't know it was a push-up bra when they bought it. She laughed and told them that she had the same experience when she was younger and had felt that it was the first time that they'd actually properly bonded, specifically mother and daughter. Like, having bonding moments like that's very important. If you're growing up in a body that you're dysphoric about, this small little thing that other people take for granted is a big deal to you.
Absolutely, especially if all you know constantly is when you look into the mirror, you see something that you do not like the sight of it. It's also nice that you get euphoric about the smallest things as well. It's at least what you're owed for going through just your headspace being something that attacks the sight of you.
It's also about the support, pun intended. But like going along, especially for the first time, to buy bras, to get a bra fitting, it is quite a big deal. It can be really nerve-wracking, even for people who are cis. So I think for them to have that support, from their mother is really beautiful at a time when it's actually so critical.
I just marvel at how much the smallest acts of kindness and decency and just being a decent person really changes that on the person receiving it.
It speaks volumes. Some of these examples where parents have done just the smallest things, like calling your daughter a bitch or saying, we're part of a gender that ignores things, is hugely affirming. And it really does show the amount of thought that those people, the conscious effort to know instinctively that my child needs my support. And I feel that it is really the calling of all true parents to love your children irrespective of what they do and what they become.
This is a slight side note, but on Facebook last night I saw a picture of, I think it was Jamie Lee Curtis with her two daughters, and they were obviously at some kind of event, and she's just looking like such a proud mum, and I just thought it was a really beautiful moment because obviously one of her daughters is trans and she's just so supportive as a mother every time I hear about her, and it's a really beautiful thing. Made me cry, listen.
There has been so many very famous, very followed people that are like of an older generation, and I don't want to say the her name. That means don't watch Hocus Pocus. But things like that, they start coming out with transphobic things, and it must be quite like shattering if they were someone who was your idol, and then you're like someone like J.K. Rowling, you've read the books and you wanted to be a wizard, and then they're like, well, actually, no, because I'm transphobic and I'm a cunt. So you're not going to be a wizard, you stay a witch. So I think when you see other stars coming out and saying, this is what my kid is and I still love them and I support them, they have a platform that many don't, then I think it's great that they do it.
This probably isn't good in the episode, but I just want to take a moment to say, how did J.K. Rowling end up so shit? She literally wrote a book about a boy in a closet who wanted to come out and find his true self and his people, and just what is she doing?
Absolutely. And the fact that you made potions where you only needed to add hair to become something else.
Yes.
And also the concept of magic that you could change.
I believe in magic, but I don't believe that people can somehow be of different genders. That's too far.
It's a really weird fucking hill to die on. No choices, no difference, and no change. And I'm going to make my entire existence not about the furthering of feminism or trying to make sure that all women are looked after, because irrespective of being trans or not trans, if you define as woman, you will get either the unhealthy dollop of misogyny or you will get transphobia and misogyny. and be turned on by your fellow feminists. They are bastards. That's what they are. Now, let's talk about how women, when they want to get vasectomies, they are constantly talked to by doctors who say, no, what about the children you might want in a later life?
Hysterectomies.
Sorry, hysterectomy. Yes, I
And
do.
vasectomies, actually. It could be either.
Indeed.
This is something that's I feel very strongly about, because I had that for years and years, and like, no, your normal contraceptions haven't been working, I keep falling pregnant, and then them deciding, yeah, what we'll do is we'll just snip them and put a wee blowtorch on them, but we'll leave you all the bits, because yeah, you might need them. Doctors are assholes. They don't listen to anyone.
Doctors are cunts. JKR is a cunt. Trans folks are cunts.
Here endeth the lesson.
I just had to get that out there. I was just having a bit of a rant.
Auntie sister's gonna rant.
I saw a very interesting take from someone on social media the other day who said the only reason they could think of for J.K. Rowling being so transphobic is that she's secretly trans and cannot accept it in herself.
Well, you find out so many homophobes are actually gay. How many preachers who are homophobic in their congregations are caught on Grindr or, oh my God. So yes, it's funny how we find their pants down by their ankles when it's in their private lives.
Was it my turn?
Yes.
It is now.
And I chose to rant instead. All right, I am going to share another story from the internets. And this one is about someone who is FTM. At this point, they were pre-everything in their transition. So they were very, very early on. And they said that they used to teach kids at a dance school, and the owner of the dance school would refuse to get their pronouns correct, even though she claimed to be supportive. You know, those kind of supportive people. I know.
Unsupportive.
However, one of the kids' grandmothers came up to them after one of the classes and just out of the blue remarked on how their voice hadn't dropped yet. And she asked them how old they were. And the person responded that they were 17. And she just assured that it will probably happen soon. Don't worry, your voice will drop. And she did this not knowing they were trans. She just assumed the correct gender. And this person says, not going to lie, it's one of the times I felt most confident about the fact that I can pass. Passing is obviously not the point, but I'm assuming it gave them a little bit of gender euphoria. So thank you, random grandma.
I love you, random grandma.
Obviously, the aim isn't for everyone for passing, but if you're getting called out as your correct pronouns or being assumed from random strangers who know nothing about you and they're confirming the gender identity that you yourself feel, then, you know, that's always a nice euphoric moment, I can imagine.
Through the cyber pipes of life, we have another entry into Trans Joyland. It goes as follows. Another fun one for me happened early in my transition before National Coming Out Day, sometime last September. I had just started presenting how I am fully. I was at work on campus during the evening shift, and a girl I had met the week prior walked in. She sat down across from me, and we started talking about classes and whatnot. At some point, when it was only the two of us in the room, she says this: "Can I ask you a question?" Internally, I start sweating bullets because I know exactly the question she's going to ask. She would also be the first one to ask it since I changed my appearance. I say, sure. She then asks, "Are you trans?" In the smallest voice I didn't even know I had, I replied, yes. She then says, "Me too." My brain basically just grinds to a halt because that was the last thing I could have predicted she'd say. All that comes out of my mouth in a really cute and stupid "oh," and she laughs. We become friends pretty quickly, and she helped introduce me to the Queer Student Union on campus, which is absolutely gorgeous.
Aww.
It's finding the kinship, because often when we go through these things, very personal to us about our experiences, how we get from A to B, is that we feel alone. So it's really nice that somebody might even understand what you're going through. And I want to say that Coming Out Day is a really good day. And I think its purpose is to instruct those who are allies that we should celebrate and make safe those who are coming out. However, it is not a call to people to come out, because people can do that and it can land them in danger. So if you are going to come out, make sure that you are ready, because not every coming out story is positive like the ones we're doing today. But we are spouting joy. We should continue with joy.
I think the other thing that I would want to add to that, which anyone who's part of the LGBTQIA plus community will already know, is that coming out is not a one-time thing. It's something that you do over and over and over again, because every new person that you meet, you have to choose, do I tell them, what do I tell them, and how do I tell them? And some of those experiences will be joyful and wonderful and affirming, and unfortunately some of them will be less so.
Some of them have champagne in.
I want to do one where I get champagne. I just want to have a party.
When I came out to my brother, he was like, brilliant. Hopped off, got some champagne, opened it. He's probably my favourite person on the earth.
That brings us on to another story I've seen from the internet. And it was someone was saying years ago on Christmas at their dad's side, all of the family was there. They got them all together, told them I'm transitioning to male. And then her aunt said, my God, finally. And then they started laughing and they all said it made sense. It seemed that the person had been happier lately. That person was so worried to come out, and they were just great about it and couldn't have asked for a better response. Since it could always be an anticlimax for someone, because if they built themselves up for months to go, Christmas Day, I'm coming out, I'm telling them everything, it's going to be me laid on a plate, and then they go, yeah, we know.
I'm not gonna lie, I would take it. Like that's far better than anything I could hope for.
I don't specifically need to tell my parents my gender because they just wouldn't understand, and also I don't. It holds nothing special to be acknowledged by them.
Tales from the interwebs, part 90,072.5.
I've been here for 89 years.
What would this fucking show do without the internet to provide most of our content? Right, kids, get close to the fireside. It's Babeushka story time. I have two sons. The first one just laid it on the line and said, Mum, I have something to tell you. I'm pansexual. I had to ask what it meant, and he explained. So I said, dude, as long as it doesn't involve animals or children, I'm cool with it. He just looked at me, tilted his head, and said, well, that went better than expected. A few years later, younger son comes out as trans. I said, okay, cool, let's go shopping. And we went and we bought a bunch of new men's clothes. I just feel like these kids get enough shit as it is.
Parenting should be done.
Here.
This is such a nice Sunday. I'm just hearing like loads of different stories about euphoric experiences had by trans people, rather than like, well, we've got T-Dog coming. So you're going to fill your cup with a bit of, the mournful.
It's really nice to get positive side of things as well, to try and balance that out. I think that it is time to hand over to Novice Socky Ball for our grand finale of the episode, which is possibly the most interesting story that we have. And I think as one that is particularly close to Socky Ball. Would you like to tell us more?
So this story comes from my hometown. Scandalous thing that happened in Renfrew, and it's actually was in the newspapers at the time. Shocking revelation, Victorian intrigue in Scotland, 1871. And the story is that a young man, John Campbell, who was 21 years old, working in the Renfrew shipyard at the time, fell ill with smallpox. So when they went to tend him and the doctor came along, they're saying, oh, there's something a bit different going on. And the doctor was coming in and out and what's going on. because obviously who was going to pay for his healthcare? Oh, he actually was from somewhere else, and he had left a wife and 2 kids. What a horrible person he was. The minister came from that town with the woman to say, is this your husband? And she says, yes, that's my husband. And someone who came along with the minister of the time had a look and went, no, that's not, that's Marie.
Oh.
Marie had married someone and she had 2 kids. So it turns out her kids were out of wedlock. There had been an understanding and they had married her, so she didn't become a fallen woman, then left, started a whole new life as John. And the best thing about this story is that although it was like shock and scandal, the actual ship workers that John worked with, they paid for his care and they paid for his funeral.
Wow.
Because he would have been put, in that time, it would have been a pauper's grave, and they would have put the name Marie. He has a grave with John.
So they just recognised John as a generally good bloke, and even despite the scandal and the revelations, they just said, John's John, let's help him out.
That was their friend John.
Amazing.
To hear a story of, at that time, them going, well, that's our friend and we're going to help look after that friend. It shows that it's not just in today's day and age that people are being accepting.
That is surprisingly forward thinking. How wonderful that his co-workers felt, do you know what, we know John, and they stood by him as friends.
I like that Renfrew's always been Renfrew, clearly.
Yes.
We don't change.
We know him. He gets a pint then. That's John.
The street that he stayed in was one that my gran was brought up in, so it does resonate a lot with me.
They're all a bunch of good cunts.
Obviously, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, fucker.
It has been absolutely wonderful having our 2 friends from the Glasgow Mission joining us today, provide wonderful pearls of wisdom along the way.
I think this has been a lovely Sunday spent listening to these really euphoric stories of such trans joy and acceptance and such happiness.
It's been our pleasure, and thank you so much for having us on such a prestigious show as this.
Hello, Mum, I'm going to be famous.
We've been dreaming forever. We've been long-time fans, first-time attendees.
How on earth are we going to follow up this episode, Babeushka? We can't possibly top this.
We're going to top this and more with December's episode.
What on earth are we doing in December that is going to be so much fun?
We've went absolutely fucking mad, and we're going to do a variety show in December.
We're going to have a variety of different fun, energetic, uplifting videos.
The next episode will not actually be the first of the month. We're not making a U-turn. We're just having a change of direction.
I've heard this before. You sound like a politician, darling.
Because we want to delay the release of the next episode as a mark of respect for World AIDS Day that will happen on the 1st of December. We want to make sure that that joy can be given at the time it feels most appropriate.
Hopefully, we might even see a few familiar Glasgow faces again. You never know.
Maybe.
Sister Joan will come and provide some shade, of course. From the glare of the ring lights.
Well, she does best.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to hit the bell notification, especially as next month's episode will not be released on our usual schedule. It'll be slightly later. So you want that notification to tell you when it's out.
You can also subscribe to it as a podcast so you can listen on the go. And do not forget that if you have really enjoyed any of the episodes that Utter Nunsense has produced, do feel free to drop by our Ko-Fi if you can spare anything.
Now we come to the most important part of the whole episode. We have to tell people that we did the thing.
We did the thing!
We did the thing!
Yeah.
We did the thing!
Doing of the
We
thing.
did the thing.
Doing of the thing. The thing is done. It was done.